So the short version is restoration agriculture. So we're in a situation, and actually a number of the speakers today have talked about our situation, which is bad. We need to do restoration. It's not enough for us to just sustain it anymore. This is actually from Aldo Leopold from 1949, and the health of the land is the foundation for our health. And we've got problems. We've got serious problems. I'm not going to go into them because I think in this audience at least it's very clear that we have serious problems. We need to do something more than just sustaining. And there's no going back. A lot of people say to me, permaculture, oh, that's like doing it the way our grandparents did it. But our grandparents had all kinds of advantages that we don't have anymore. They had largely intact ecosystems with all kinds of ecosystem services that we can no longer rely on. They had stable weather patterns. They had low population densities. They had populations that were used to working hard. They had a producer society, and they had very short distribution pathways. So there is no going back. We have to move forward, and we have to move forward. These issues, this is what we're talking about today. Food banks, food is charity. I live just down the block from the food bank in Courtney, and I'm heartbroken every time. Every time I walk by there, the line is longer. Toxic agriculture is actually publicly subsidized because it's all oil-based, and we publicly fund those oil companies. Toxic ag is subsidized, and your organic farmer is paying a premium. This is not okay. This makes it really, really difficult. My background is as a single parent, self-supporting. For me, nothing to do with what farmers earn. I totally believe farmers should earn money, but when it comes to paying $6 for a dozen eggs, I go like this. And there are all kinds of people like me who make those choices about food because that's the only flexibility that they have. They don't want to feed their kids crap, but they don't have any other flexibility. So, and then our seed rights, our right to grow food is being challenged, all over. So we've got some serious problems, and we need to have regeneration. And regenerative food systems have huge problems. This is good news. This is the first good news about the environment that we've heard in probably 25 years. We can have abundant productivity, we can have food security, we can have ecosystem restoration. We do not have to decide between saving this little tiny bit and having production. We actually can do both. So this is exciting to me. And permaculture, I'm not going to spend too much time, but it's a really different perspective on things. Permaculture is, the main thing is that it's different. Mollison and Holmgren was a grad student and also was his advisor, and their question was, can we do agriculture better? Can we use what we know about ecology? Can we use what we know to do a more self-sustaining system? And of course, they weren't working independently. This Seppelzer was in Austria, and Nansen Noble was in Japan. They were, it was coming together. It was based on the work of Leopold and Les Jackson and all the people that worked in the early part of the 20th century, right? So it was a natural progression. The idea is agriculturally productive ecosystems that are in imitation of natural ecosystems, that we can actually produce food the way nature does, that we can produce stuff. And of course, it got expanded to mean not just agriculture, but human culture. We do sustainable human culture. Permaculture is very much pragmatic. We're a materialist. We feel that the problems in the world are material problems. It's not about, how good you feel in your heart or whether you have the spiritual elevation or not. It's about where you put your shit. Sorry. But it's practical. We're basically doing ecological engineering, and it's a science approach, it's an ethical approach, right? So just for horticulture is cultivating plants, agriculture is cultivating fields, permaculture is cultivating permanence, cultivating permanent human societies that actually can survive and be beneficial to the natural world. That's the goal. So there's the ethics, and then there's the techniques. And I'm not even going to get into any of this except for the ethics, because that's really important. 3 ethics: earth care, people care, fair share. And fair share isn't just about making sure that the disadvantaged but it's also a realization that we're not the only creature that matters in this planet, and that, you know, other wild creatures, wilderness, and other things like that also are important, and we need to make sure that they get for our own benefit as well as theirs. So restoration and repair are the primary design considerations on any permaculture design, and this is a passion for me. And then people care, right? The idea is not that, you know, we have to have this pristine wilderness of which people cannot benefit at all. You know, it's like just have this glass thing. People care, and I don't really like this slide because I think this part of the creatures needs to be bigger, but I guess that's part of the care. Human needs. We need all these things. We need good air, good water, nutrient-dense food. We need to produce energy. We need to have strong communities. We need to have biodiversity. And then the fair share, which I always say is return the surplus. This is really important. Use only what we can manage and improve. If you can't improve a situation, leave it alone. Natural restoration will happen. If you can't help that process, just let it go. And then this is something I always feel the need. What is sustainable? It's one of those words. It's just been abused, right? Sustainable development is development that can be sustained. But sustainable does have a meaning. And a sustainable system is one that can maintain itself, provides enough energy for its own reproduction, does not require outside labor or inputs, so you don't have to weed the forest, you don't have to fertilize the swamp, you don't have to have additional inputs into a sustainable system, or minimal additional inputs, because we are also taking out anything. And then resilience. And actually, resilience is probably a better, more useful term than sustainable at this point, just because it has been so badly used. So this is the way an ecosystem looks. And there's redundancies. There's interconnections everywhere, and there's redundancies. So there's not just one kind of animal, there's not just one kind of microbes. You know, the idea if we're doing things in imitation of nature, this is a pattern that we need to remember and think about when we're designing, when we're creating things. Natural ecosystems are abundant, they are resilient, they do not have waste. You know, at every level, waste is actually a resource for the next level. So waste as a resource is a really big principle when you're trying to imitate a natural ecosystem. And then ecosystems are dynamic, and this is really important because I'm going to talk about regeneration, but oftentimes when we want to restore natural areas, we have in our minds this idea that the ecosystem that existed in the colonial period when we first arrived on this island is the ecosystem, right? We have this idea of this pristine, stable ecosystem, but in fact, ecosystems change over time, and there's a dynamism, there's a renewal, there's a degenerative thing, and they change. Certain ecosystems that we thought were primeval ecosystems, like the Amazon rainforest, turns out it's an abandoned orchard. It wasn't primeval. Even the hardwood forests on the eastern seaboard of North America, like that hardwood forest is made up of 5 different kinds of high-protein nut trees. It's not a natural forest. It was planted as a resource for people, right? So this idea of, you know, ecosystems are dynamic, they degenerate, they renew, they change. That's really important. When we talk about restoration work as permaculturists, we're not talking about putting things back to some idealized, mythical, perfect ecosystem. We're talking about building an ecosystem that we can be part of. So interconnected systems give us stability, fertility, productivity, and productivity, of course, gives us a stable economy, which is another really important human need. Yield is one of those things. Generally, when we talk about yield, we talk about how many carrots we can produce in an acre, or how much wheat we can produce in an acre. But in an ecosystem, yield is everything that is produced. You know, we had a talk earlier about wild foods and forestry and how forests are looked at as timber. But in fact, they produce all kinds of wild food, mushrooms, all kinds of things. So when you look at the entire yield, you could do a selective logging and get timber, but you could also get all those wild foods. You know, you might not get as much timber per acre, but your overall yield is going to be greater. So, keep the fair share in mind. We can't all live like Californians, but we can all live. And intensive systems are the way to go. Before industrial agriculture got going, there was 2 parallel systems on any farm. There would have been the extensive system of whatever their cash crop was, but there would also have been, a few chickens, a kitchen garden, a couple of cows. So they had their intensive systems for feeding themselves and the farm workers, right? And that sort of disappeared. I mean, it's coming back big time now. I'm looking around at all the organic farmers in the county going, yeah, I know what you're doing. But that sort of disappeared when industrial agriculture got going. We're saying minimize the land use and maximize your productivity. In Russia, 90% of food is produced in kitchen gardens. People are producing their own food, partly because they've had to, but it's working. They're using very little land to produce a lot of food. Small-scale intensive systems. There's lots of techniques, and I don't really have time to talk about techniques. As I said earlier, there's the universal principles and the ethics, and then there's the techniques. And permaculturists are absolutely indiscriminate about techniques. In fact, if it's a technique from anywhere, if it works, they'll use it. It's like, okay, that's permaculture too. Okay, we can use that. So it's not like, oh no, that's biodynamics. We can't use that. That's not permaculture. No, biodynamics works. We're using it. French intensive farming works. We're using that. So techniques are really, really flexible. Anything that works, we're using it. The idea is, if we reduce the amount of land we need and maximize the productivity of that land, then all of the wild systems that are under stress get a chance to recover, right? So really important to rebuild soil fertility. These are all things that you have to do if you're using intensive growing systems. You need to grow nutrients in your soil. You need to plant and attract roots. There's a peak phosphorus. This is the industrial mindset that it's like, we can't grow food without phosphorus. Birds come to your garden and yeah, they'll eat some of your seed, but they always leave you a little gift of phosphorus. So composting, sheet mulching, actually there's going to be a sheet mulching workshop. And we have a sheet mulch, probably a sheet mulching workshop. Sheet mulching is really, really important for small intensive systems. As a permaculturist, I get people saying, oh, permaculture, that's so exciting. I just dug up my entire front lawn so that I planted a garden. And I go, oh, because most of the life of the soil is in that top 6 inches. Most of the biomass of the soil is in that lawn, right? So digging up your lawn, getting rid of all the topsoil, and then planting a garden is just like the kind of thing that makes a permaculturist cringe. Anyways, all kinds of ways to promote soil.
What is the soil probiotics?
People often call it compost tea. I try not to use that term because compost tea can be stagnant, anaerobic stuff that's actually damaging. It's the one that's aerated, right? So it's actually, and I say probiotics deliberately too because I want people to make the connection between the probiotics that we eat and that we use for fermented foods, and that is really important for our intestinal health, with the probiotics that are important for the plant health in the soil. But yeah, those are things that I get into more detail about. Biological detoxification, actually I got this really great book. I'm really excited about this stuff. Earth repair. This is a manual for anyone who's doing detoxification on soil. It's things that can be done using mushrooms, using mustard. Mustard's amazing for...
What's the author's name?
I can't remember. Delilah Darwish. There are things they can do like on, for rare earths, which are really contaminate the soil. They grow mustard, they harvest the mustard, which has brought these cadmium and things like that to the surface. They incinerate the biomass, and then they can extract those rare earths, which is really important. Your iPad, the projector, my computer, all of those need those rare earths, right? So, getting some kind of detoxification of the soil and then actually having those resources so that they don't require mining and extractive toxic processes, that's a plus. Okay, wastewater treatment. I mean, the worst thing we can do in our fresh water is shit in it. And the worst thing we can do in terms of managing our shit is put it in fresh water. But but there are actually solar aquatic systems for turning black water into drinkable water.